The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Tuesdays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you do it all right. We trudge forward for Saturday, Nebraska, Michigan. And welcome to spend some time talking about the matchup. We'll hear from some of the coordinators and one of the famous folks that'll be on hand for Nebraska, Michigan speaks out as the Bussin' boys set to descend this weekend as well. Numbers to get in today with Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865, toll free where you hear us across the state. Could always fire up the stream and get involved that way. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Can watch the show both ways on video. So, guest lined up today, Mitch Sherman is with us at 425 from The Athletic. Really good story from Mitch. Many good stories from Mitch, but talks about the crossroads with Nebraska's offense. And that is a big-time concern for Saturday. What can you expect? What can you get on the offensive side of the football? A lot of players spoke today, too. And I like the confidence. And they're not egotistical. They're not cocky at all. They're just confident. They're confident. I think they're excited to play. I don't know, and we'll dive into this, where the fan base is at for Saturday, what your excitement level is, but we'll spend some time with Mitch Sherman in about 15 minutes or so. In hour two, it's going to be one of those, well, physical fullback type of ball games, and let's talk to a great fullback. Tom Rathman will join us, Husker Hall of Famer, San Francisco 49er Hall of Famer, 31 years in the NFL, great years in Lincoln, of course, in the 80s. And he also coached with Harbaugh in San Francisco. So we'll get his perspective on Nebraska. We'll get his perspective on his time with Harbaugh and just that blueprint we touched on a little bit yesterday, that Harbaugh blueprint that Trev Alberts mentioned last night, that Michigan blueprint, what Nebraska's going after here in this rebuild with Matt Rhule. Also at hour two, noted Husker fan, radio host, New York Times bestselling author. We'll get Lars Anderson's take. He's a big Red fan. And what does Lars say about Saturday? So that's the lineup for you. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channels and the Facebook channels as well, 489-1240. So it's going to be all sorts of crazy this weekend. Packed house, hot temperatures, and number two coming to town. So what does El Presidente think about Nebraska? You have Dave Portnoy of Barstool weighing in. Of course, he's hooked up and linked up with Mr. Will Compton, Taylor Lewan, the Bussin' with the Boys. We get a kick out of those fellas. They do a great job. Well, Portnoy trolling a little bit. And
it should be noted, he's friends with both Lewan and
yes,
Compton, who have the rivalry, but Dave Portnoy himself is a University of Michigan alum.
He's a proud Michigan alum.
Very proud.
So, yeah, and he shows that, or you hear that proudness anyway in this Twitter posting a little bit earlier today.
All right, this week, big week. I am so excited to finally head to Lincoln, Nebraska. Michigan, Nebraska, Will Compton, Bussin' Bowl. I said we would never go to Lincoln, even though I've wanted to, because I know it's a great football town. We'd never go till Nebraska was good again. I threw that out the window. That's how bad I want to go experience a game in Lincoln. The black shirts, and even though I'm a Michigan guy, even though I graduated from Michigan, even though we're number 2 in the country, I'm with the Cornhuskers. I'm with Big Red. We got these shirts. I'm on board. I don't need Nebraska to be good again. I don't need them to be great again. Let's just make Nebraska mediocre again. Let's go Big Ten. Keep it close. Keep it close, Nebraska. Let's keep this within 10 points going into the fourth, and that's a win. Let's make Nebraska great again. Will Compton, Rhule, let's do it together. Just mediocre. That's all we ask for. Make Nebraska mediocre again. We'll see you in Lincoln. I can't wait.
So, would you say Nebraska's mediocre? Right now, 2-2 is 500. That's average. When you look at the numbers, the defense is not mediocre. The defense is good. The defense is forceful. The special teams unit, work in progress. The offense, an absolute work in progress. And that shirt that he's hawking, the black or the red version, similar to the MAGA stuff, you know what? He's going to get a reaction. There's a ton of folks who listen and follow along with his creation. There's a ton of fans there for the Bussin' Boys, and I get it. And, yeah, make Nebraska mediocre again. That stings. But the last few years, Nebraska's not even mediocre to me. Is 500. There's some good, there's some bad, there's some ugly.
Well, and that's the thing I feel like it's supposed to be a little backhanded towards Nebraska.
It's very backhanded.
Like, I'm rooting for you guys. You can be mediocre.
Can you keep it interesting so you have my attention going into the fourth quarter? I think Nebraska fans are asking themselves the same thing.
Yeah, I think Husker fans are in the same boat all off season long. You're like, what's the expectation? 6-6, 500, a bowl game. Husker fans want to be mediocre again too. Like, well, it's supposed to be backhanded in the long term.
It's not staying mediocre. It's like this is step one of many to get back to prominence. Prominence being challenging for conference championships. Prominence being a team that beats the hell out of the opponent and rules the fourth quarter, no pun intended. So, yeah, I mean, it is step one. But you listen, the buzz level on this thing is lacking. Mm-hmm. And think 2 years ago, and I hate to go rear view mirror, but 2 years ago, what did you have? You had a heartbreaker against Sparty. You came back and dismantled Northwestern. And then how good a Saturday night was that in Lincoln with Michigan with the eyeballs watching? Heartbreaker, I know the result wasn't anything that you sign up for on Saturday night as a Nebraska football fan, but you were in it. You were on the verge. You were a turnover away. You were going down to win that thing against a college football playoff team. You had points. You had offense. You had moments of defense. That was a pretty high-powered offensive attack for both teams. You didn't have a great Nebraska defense that year. You had a serviceable to good when it came to what they did that night, and that's take the football away from Michigan. I think they forced 2 or 3 turnovers that night. But problem is Nebraska, I think, had some costly turnovers and penalties. You remember how insane that was. That was the unveiling of the light show where you had a little Thunderstruck and some Nirvana going. It was the second rendition because I think the week before you had the unveiling of the blowtorches and the fireworks and Nebraska's night stadium extravaganza going into that fourth quarter. And with Nebraska having that moment 2 years ago and not closing the deal, I mean, it torqued you off, and it was par for the course for 2021. Last year you get drilled because Michigan was even better. And now this is the third year in a row you're getting you're getting Michigan, and they're coming in as good as they've ever been on the lines of scrimmage, as good as they've ever been with a 1-2 punch at running back, as good as they've ever been with a quarterback that can manage and then go make some plays for you. And then you flip it around, and they got that defense that they're breathing fire. And it's, as a unit, number 3 in the country. And that's what you're going to get Saturday. I have no doubt that Nebraska's defense will keep Nebraska in the game for a portion of the game. I have no doubt that if this thing is going to be in question or still a ball game by the fourth quarter, it's going to be some special teams. And Elijah, it's going to be the physicality that Nebraska has continued to develop on offense. What can this offense do with their downhill run game? What can you get out of the passing game? Can you take care of the football? I mean, all those questions are going to need to be better than expected for Nebraska to be in this thing. They're just not at the level right now. I think the effort and intensity will be there. They're just two different programs in two different spots right now. And that is kind of taking some air out of what Saturday should be. Now, the wild card for me, and we'll get to your comments here in the stream, I promise, is the 12th man, is Husker Nation, is Memorial Stadium. How bloodlust filled on Bloody Tuesday, as it's been deemed by the coaches today in the press conference, how out for blood is Memorial Stadium? Is it Miami 2014? Is it as raucous as Michigan, Nebraska 2021? Night game versus 2:30 kick, I understand. Little difference in vibement time allowed. But how off the chain is Memorial Stadium going to be with the fan base? Because I think the fans going in they're going to absolutely support Nebraska. They're going to go in and be proud of the effort, because I think Nebraska will give great effort. It's what mistakes follow with the football team, because they've been mistake prone. And what type of energy is going to be brought, or what kind of energy is going to be provided by the players to get the crowd involved?
Well, it's Husker fans right now, from my kind of outside perspective, is it feels like Husker fans are waiting for that proof of concept game or that proof of concept moment from Matt Rhule. You're sitting here at this Michigan game.
You've seen it on one side of the ball already, I think.
You've seen it on one side of the ball, but you're sitting there and you're, I think, waiting for the fans that are going to be at the game, waiting for Nebraska to first shoot themselves in the foot. Because
a little bit, because it's happened in Minnesota, it's happened in Colorado.
And it happened for years prior to this. It's kind of the story of what Husker football is right now. And yeah, you took down Northern Illinois, you took down Louisiana Tech, but how much does that mean? Husker fans are waiting for that proof of concept moment that Matt Rhule and this program have turned a corner. Maybe not to the level of 9-3, 10-2, 11-1, competing for the Big Ten West and eventually competing for the Big Ten. Not that, but turning the corner from what was previously here. Because you didn't see Nebraska turn that corner. What was it in the fourth quarter against Minnesota? It was shooting yourselves in the foot. Whenever you have a chance to go win the game, you end up losing it by doing too much, trying too hard. Mm-hmm. Anthony Grant trying to make something happen. He fumbles the football. And you blow it at the end.
Interception thrown, two killers.
And same story against Colorado. You have a chance to take the lead. What do? You miss the field goal, and then at the end of the half, it becomes a turnover fest, and you gift Colorado 13 points, and you're down by 13. That's still the story against big-time competition. I think Husker fans are going to be waiting for that on Saturday against Michigan. But that can get turned on its head if Nebraska comes out firing and they give the fans something to cheer about. I think that's where Husker fans are at right now. They're like, well, we see it's Michigan. We see the number 2 next to their name. And we think that they're going to end up, let's be honest, demolishing this Husker football team, because you haven't seen the Husker football team take that next stride under Matt Rhule. When does that happen? Does it happen on Saturday? I'm not going to say it is. I think it's your next opportunity to have that proof of concept game to turn the corner, and that doesn't necessarily mean a win, but it means a much improved eye test from what it was under Scott Frost and what it was the first 2 games of the season in terms of self-inflicted mistakes, in terms of turnovers, in terms of just being able to play competitively. But this is what Saturday is. It's that opportunity to have something go right early, get the fans on your side, and you know what, make it a game going down in the fourth quarter.
Here's what my eye test has shown me. When you talk about turning the corner under Rhule and this staff and this team already through 4 games, I see a more physical team because of how they've practiced, and that's transitioned over. I've seen new players, and I've seen existing players get better. I've seen that on the offensive line. Is it great? No, but it's better, and they're improving. All right, and I'm also seeing a fast and kind of fearless and physical defense that they can give you time. They can give Nebraska time Saturday against Michigan to try and get something going on offense. You gave a lot of time against Colorado for that to start happening, and then it did, and it was 13-7, and then what? You didn't get any more stops on defense. In fact, your third and long defense all year long has been problematic. You just worry about Michigan with their skill, with their ability, with their talent. Nebraska can have really a good game against Michigan defensively, but Michigan can still hit you for 2 or 3 big plays. And then it's 17, it's 14, it's 21. What does your offense do? That's the big question. That's the air out of the big red balloon that I still wish flew at Memorial Stadium after a touchdown. That's the concern. That's the hesitation right now for Saturday for some in the fan base. And Cutter's a fan that's like, look, and he's in here every day, God love him. Cutter's like, look, Nebraska fans will be ready to go. We are due to get a significant win, and you could sell me ways that this could be the game. Michigan does not scare me like they have in past. Excited for Saturday. Good for you, Cutter. More comments. We'll get to them here. Can dial us up 489-1240. Mitch Sherman on the way with Hail Varsity.
It's that time.
Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Coming up, longtime Harbaugh assistant, Husker Hall of Famer Tom Rathman on the way. We welcome in Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman. That's where you find and follow him. Mitch, how we doing?
Doing well. Making it through the week. How are you?
Same. We're talking here about outcomes for Saturday. And I know, Mitch, I want to start off with a story you wrote over the weekend on The Athletic about Nebraska's offense and the crossroads part of things, because you're seeing, well, Nebraska finding ways with the offense, with the option, with the quarterback run, and I'm wondering its application for Saturday.
Yeah, it's an evolution, as Heinrich Haarberg said in the post-game interviews, what's happened with this offense. And you know, Marcus Satterfield talked today about how he's never been around the option and didn't spend time practicing and teaching the option in the summer when it looked like this Nebraska offense was going to have some different pieces, some bigger pieces in the pass game than what it's got as we sit here heading into Week 5 against Michigan. So I think people can see the direction that this offense is headed, and you know, if you can't, it's what you saw in the second half as Nebraska pulled away from Louisiana Tech. That's their strength. You know, whether it's best suited to be able to beat Michigan or not, and I would maybe say not, it's the thing that works for Nebraska right now with the personnel that it has. So you have to think about this game and what you're doing here in Week 5 with an eye also on how to get better beyond the Michigan week. And that means preparing for the rest of the Big Ten and trying to get to that 6-win plateau that can allow Nebraska to practice into December and make it over the hurdle to get to a bowl game.
It's Mitch Sherman with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, looking ahead Nebraska, Michigan on Saturday. And Mitch, if the win isn't the most important part of Saturday, what do you think is, specifically from an offensive point of view? Because you have a feeling, looking at this one, how Michigan's defense, how dominant they are, I should say, that Nebraska's offense is going to have some struggles based on what we've seen so far this year. So what would a successful day for the Husker offense be if we're looking forward in the longer, grander scheme of the season?
Sure. I don't think that they're going to see it as successful if they do anything other than win. That's a rally cry for this team, and they're not not going to go back on that. You know, a 1-point loss is a loss, and I think that's an attitude that, you know, and Nebraska has said that before in past years. They've not talked about moral victories, so I don't want to make it seem like they have, but I think it's been reinstilled by Matt Rhule to require a standard in this program that Nebraska plays to. So I'll say that up front, but I do think that there are things that can come out of this game that would help Nebraska in the weeks ahead, even if it loses. It's not the intended or desired outcome. It's not something they'll be happy with, but maybe in looking back on the Michigan game, if they get to November and they're in a good spot to make a bowl game, they would say if they stand up with Michigan and put up a fight and show that they're ready to be a physical team right now in the Big Ten, if they continue to do the core principle things that they've done in the first 4 games, and that's run the ball well and slow down the opposing team's run, then I think that will help build some confidence. That will help them against Illinois and Purdue and Northwestern coming up. So, you know, those items are certainly not the objectives and the goals as they state them heading towards Saturday, but there are things, that can come out of this that benefit Nebraska, even if it's 2-3 as we move into week 6.
There is a short-term and long-term outlook for sure with the season and then 1 week. That said, we were just talking about how 2 years ago it was one of the more electric night atmospheres with an almost, right, against a college football playoff team. And I know Rhule and crew aren't rearview mirror, but you now have number 2 coming in. It's not a night game, it's a 2:30. But the fan base right now, just the lack of buzz for this thing when Nebraska's not had Michigan in town that often. I think twice is it in its history in the Big Ten. So here comes Michigan a third time before things really get crazy without divisions, and they're number 2. They're a title favorite up there with Georgia, and the feel right now is just don't get embarrassed. That's kind of the feel from the fan base, at least the feedback we've gotten, or quite frankly that you're afraid to watch Saturday just because of how inconsistent or inept the offense has been, Mitch.
Yeah, I think there is that general feeling, and I think that stems from the way that Nebraska has played offensively all year, but mainly in those first 2 games when the turnovers were coming in bunches. If Nebraska can take care of the ball, I do think that they play a style that would prevent an embarrassment. It could still happen, and you saw Iowa get embarrassed with the similar style of play, and in the play numbers were just eye-popping. The number of total plays run in that Penn State-Iowa game on Saturday night, it was in the 90s for Penn State and the 30s for Iowa. So that's a team in Iowa that's trying to slow it down and trying to keep it methodical and keep things close so that they can be in the game in the fourth quarter, and then it got out of hand. And it doesn't usually happen to Iowa that way. Those are rare games. There's some things that Matt Rhule has emulated. There's some things that he takes, from that Iowa kind of style. Not in terms of the offensive production, but just as far as the methodical nature of using the play clock and going into a huddle and trying to keep his team in games when it doesn't have the edge in talent with its offense. And that's going to be one of the objectives. It's part of the game plan, I'm sure, going into Saturday against Michigan, is to keep it close. And if you can find a way to hang around into the second half, then it becomes a much shorter game. That's what happened 2 years ago in Lincoln. I'm not projecting that this time around, but it has to be what Nebraska's thinking as the hours tick away until kickoff.
Mitch Sherman's with us here talking Nebraska-Michigan on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mitch, you talk about the Iowa performance against Penn State. I want to quickly get your thoughts on what we've seen thus far in both the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West. Not to zoom out from the Michigan game too much, but it seems to be a 3 horse race in the East with Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. I want to get your thoughts on just which of those teams has been most impressive to you to start the year. And then over in the Big Ten West, it's another year of wide openness in the Big Ten West. And I want to get your thoughts on where Nebraska stands in those Big Ten West standings, because it kind of feels like it could be anyone's show in the Big Ten West this year.
Right. Well, in the East first, don't kick Maryland out until they do it themselves, and I fully expect that'll happen. The cream will separate, but Maryland's looks pretty good, and they're going to get their opportunity against all three of those big dogs. Right now, Penn State has been the best team, and I realize that Michigan is the highest ranked, and that Ohio State has the best win now with a victory at Notre Dame on Saturday night. But Penn State has been the most consistent team, the closest to dominant that I've seen when I've watched all three of these Big Ten East monsters go at it. So, I'll stick with my preseason prediction on those teams was that they would go 1-1, all three against each other. And I'm sticking with that right now. And if that's the case, you get down to tiebreakers and is there a team among the three that slips somewhere else in the conference? I think there's an opportunity. There's a chance that Ohio State could slip somewhere else just because they haven't looked as dominant. But maybe they'll get their mojo back now that they escaped South Bend with that win in the last minute, the last second of that game Saturday night. In the West, Wisconsin to me, based on the victory at Purdue last Friday, I put them at the top, but it's not like steady ground that they're on. They have a bad loss to Washington State, which is a ranked team, but it didn't happen in the way that you would expect to see from Wisconsin. Minnesota's been pretty bad and really bad in losing to Northwestern. I don't think that is a sign Northwestern is a contender in the division. You saw what happened to Iowa. Illinois and Purdue don't look like juggernauts at all. So, where does Nebraska fit? I mean, if Nebraska had won the game at Minnesota on August 31st, even with an expected loss against Michigan, I'd say the Huskers were potentially right in it and somewhat controlled their own destiny. But it's tough to start 0-2 if that, in fact, is the case after Saturday in the Big Ten and claw your way back into a division race, even if it is a division race in the Big Ten West that's going to crown a champion with likely more than 2 conference defeats. I mean, mathematically, Nebraska will still be alive, but the margin for error is really slim, and I don't think that this is a Nebraska team that can withstand a margin for error that's really slim. So probably not this year, Nebraska, to go play in the Big Ten championship. And after this year, you got to be one of the top 2 teams in the league. So Matt Rhule and his staff will have their work cut out for them to get to one of those games.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic at Mitch Sherman. Mitch, before we say goodbye, what if you have to pick something that you're confident in with Nebraska's offense, what is it Saturday? What can they do against Michigan? What's possible?
Well, that's a great question. They're going to try to be physical. Mm-hmm. And, I think that Nebraska as an offensive line, even against a great defense like Michigan, I think that they have an ability. I don't see them getting overwhelmed in the run game. Is it going to be enough to score a bunch of points? No. But I think there's an opportunity for Nebraska to get some first downs in this game, to move the chains. If Anthony Grant is at it, if he's got his A game going, Michigan hasn't been the Georgia from the college football playoff last year. I mean, they have it in them to be maybe the best defense or one of the best 2 defenses in this country, but they haven't been dominant for 60 minutes every time that they've played this year. So I'm not confident really in much of anything, Chris, about what Nebraska is going to do offensively. But I'm confident that they're going to try to run the ball. And I think that, for a portion of this game, you may see them have enough success just to keep Michigan from running away and from getting the ball back after every 3 or 4 plays for Nebraska and just putting that game out of reach in the first half.
Mitch, we'll talk on Saturday, bud. Thanks for the time.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks to Mitch Sherman for hanging out, talking Nebraska, Michigan, 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can find the podcast, Hail Varsity Radio. Download, subscribe, and give us a follow. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Easy for you to do. And can always watch the show, do so when you check us out on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. All sorts of easy ways to do that, or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Robert's been on hold. Robert, welcome into Hail Varsity. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why are some of the previous callers so scared of Michigan? Michigan hasn't played anybody. They've played UNLV, Bowling Green. Nobody good. They've played all their games at home, and they're finally going on the road. And I think our fans here can make it a hostile environment for them. Nebraska, on the other hand, started out on the road against two, okay teams. Pretty big names, but nonetheless on the road. So we've already been through that where Michigan hasn't been on the road yet. And again, they haven't really played a very strong schedule. I'm not afraid of Michigan.
Here's the thing, Robert.
Robert, good for you.
One thing I will say, though, Michigan led the Big Ten in terms of returning production last year. 81% of their team returned.
They went to the playoff.
Among their starters in the team that returned to the playoff, that includes 4 offensive linemen, your quarterback, your top 2 running backs, 2 members of your secondary, both your leading tacklers at linebacker who started last year, and then 4 of your 5 defensive linemen who got significant snaps last year, all returning for Michigan. That's why I think people are scared of Michigan, because that was an undeniably great team last year. They went 12-0, went to the playoff, and they got back almost all of their key players from last year. That's what's scary.
And who did they play last year? What was their big quality win last year? Ohio State and what else?
Ohio State kind of does it for me, but
also the fact that they beat Nebraska by 30.
Yeah, severely.
If you don't play anybody until you play each other, a la Ohio State and Michigan, it's kind of like Nebraska and Oklahoma used to be. We'd beat up on a bunch of nobodies and then pretty much just have to beat each other. Winner goes to the national championship. That's a pretty easy row to hoe.
What gives you, really flip it around, Robert, what gives you confidence aside that Michigan's schedule has not impressed you? What gives you confidence in Nebraska?
Well, Nebraska, I really like Harbaugh. I think now that we're past Sims, that we have a lot more confidence. Obviously, the kid can run. He's got deceptive speed out there in the open. He hits that corner, and it just looks like he stops for a second and then starts to run, and next thing you know, he's gone. I really like Fedoni blocking on that end. I like us. I think we're gaining confidence, and again, the home crowd. If the home crowd gets loud and makes it tough for Michigan every play, not just on third down, every play, we can be in this thing. You never know how that ball's going to bounce. Things can happen, and you pick up a little steam, and next thing you know, you got them.
You need some momentum. You have a little bit of that with 2 wins going into this. You've got better confidence. I don't disagree with you there, Robert. Just a tall task based on what's coming back, but I think that's the wild card. I think the crowd is the wild card. The last 2 Saturdays, it's not been as juiced as it could have been, but it might be overflow juice-wise for this Saturday. We'll see. I'm not sure how the crowd will be, if they're going to be carnival out for blood or if they're going to be waiting for something bad to happen. It's kind of just a bit nervous.
Yeah, we got to get over that mindset. Those days are past. We're already on track to win more games than we have in any of the last 5 years. So,
Robert, appreciate the call. Appreciate you tuning in. 489-1240. Good for Robert, man. Robert's like, bring on Harbaugh. Harbaugh he switched up. He had his presser today. And well, what did he do during the Harbaugh timeout? Take a listen.
My wife got this YouTube TV. It's like half the price of DirecTV. No offense, DirecTV, but we're over there at YouTube TV now, and there's must be 150 games to watch. So I'm in hog heaven on a Saturday night watching those games, watching a lot of them, and then you can go back and watch them again. If you didn't watch the one, you can. So it's like taped for you right there. So yeah, I don't know if I learned anything, but just bouncing around watching a lot of football.
He was asked, "What'd you learn about Ohio State?" Because they were on against Notre Dame, and well, what is this YouTube TV you speak of? And it's cheaper. Can't you see him in timeout, just like mesmerized by all the options? Not to do a full non-paid ad lib here for YouTube TV, but he's funny. I mean, that was that same tone as I'm leaving the men's room at Big Ten Media Days, and he's getting cornered by a reporter. "What music do you like, Jim? Coach Harbaugh, who do you listen to before the game?" And he's like, "Well, I like Hootie, and I like Alanis Morissette." And away we go. Let's talk about Bloody Tuesday for a minute. Coach Tony White dives in and explains what Tuesdays are all about. This bodes well if you are thinking, like Robert, that Nebraska can come into this thing Saturday and have a fighting shot.
Okay, it's Bloody Tuesday, so my voice is gone again. Oh, man, physical. They have day off, they're running around, so it's really physical, a lot of competition, ones-on-ones, ones-on-twos, stuff like that. So sets the tone for the whole week, because everything's about practice. So it's a physical day.
Gotta love it. That's what will give you a chance Saturday. But to Mitch's point, that is what's going to give you a shot the rest of the season for bowling and beyond. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's more. Maybe you're fighting on Black Friday to get to 6. But the way they've gone after it every day in practice is going to make them better. And how does that stack up and stand up? I think the fans on Saturday, and I'm not questioning Nebraska fans because, I grew up going to games. I'm not a fan, not professionally, obviously. But I think they can get riled up. They can get rowdy, but something good's got to happen early, right? The defense is either going to go out there and sell out and do their best, but something's got to happen good offensively or special teams early in that ball game. And Michigan's going to have a bit of an off game. It's possible that they can. They didn't look as locked in against Rutgers either, but there's so much familiarity with Schiano and Harbaugh, Elijah, that's a tougher gig. It was like when Riley coached against Wisconsin. How the hell did Nebraska ever hang with Wisconsin as much as they did? But there was a lot of crossover.
We'll maybe get into this next segment. The thing is about Michigan is even on an offensive day, they can always fall back on that offensive line and that rushing attack. They can just hammer you. The defense going to need some help. Tom Rathman knows Harbaugh well, coming up in 10 minutes.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hour 1, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Stream the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law. Personal injury. Have you been hurt in a personal injury accident? You can count on Dyer Law to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call Dyer Law, the team today at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your personal injury claim. That's dyer.law, 402-393-7529. Let's get to the phones. Mike with us here on Hail Varsity. Mike, go for it.
Hello there. I just called in to just remind everybody we got number 15 in the Wolverine uniform this year. He's probably going to be playing balls out against his former Husker teammates, Ernest Hausmann.
Ernest is good ball player, man. It's not a good thing that he's gone, but Nebraska's linebackers have been pretty good this year.
Yes, they are. It created an opportunity for the neat young man from Omaha Creek Prep to step up, John Bullock, and I know they're friends. know Ernest personally, and I can tell you, he's really looking forward to coming back to Nebraska and playing. It'll be interesting to see how he lights it up. He had 10 tackles against Michigan last year as a true freshman, and so I could see why Mr. Harbaugh would want him when he went into the transfer portal. So that's all I got. You guys do a great job.
Hey, appreciate you.
Mike from Omaha signing off.
Mike.
Great show. God bless you.
Take care, bud.
Mike.
Appreciate you, Mike, for listening.
And that's another important point that I made, that Michigan returned their top 2 tacklers last year in the linebacking core.
And then here's Ernest balling out.
That's Junior Colson, a senior, and then 6th-year graduate student Mike Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those guys have been conceding snaps to Ernest Hausmann over the past couple of games. Ernest Hausmann's getting a bigger and bigger share, so that just kind of shows you what Michigan is. And that's a team that returned 80-something% of their starting production from last year.
Can I say something about Ernest? When he left Nebraska, that was tough for Nebraska. He looked at Iowa, that has produced NFL linebackers as well. And of all places to go land, why do guys leave? You always wonder that. And Ernest left to want to go win. And he picked the place that, good luck trying to crack the lineup, as stacked as they've been, as well as they've recruited, and he's done it. He's incredibly talented, and we loved our conversations with him last year and wish him nothing but the best. And, Nebraska's a squad that has done well. Dvorak and Coach White and that defense, man, they've got some linebackers. And we'll know more, maybe, for sure before kickoff, but maybe by Thursday you want a guy like Reimer playing for you on Saturday, and we'll see where his injury situation is. Bullock's played well. Mikhail's been just tremendous. Kid out of New Jersey. He's been a lot of fun to watch. And Henrich has come back and done well after his injury. So, no, Nebraska's front has been a really nice surprise from a standpoint of how they've remade themselves and how effective they've been with pressures and sacks. And that 1.6 per carry is elite. That, to me, and I'll say this, but even if Nebraska gets beat up a little bit by Michigan, that's probably going to be more of a credit to Michigan and how good they are.
That's what I was going to go. Michigan's offensive line last year, I hit it last segment, they returned 4 starters. They won the Joe Moore Award last year for best offensive line in the country. They lost their center, who was fantastic, but they return a ton of that offensive line.
Tom Rathman, Husker Hall of Famer, what's he have to say? He's up next.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can stream the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio, and wherever you hear us across the Hail Varsity Radio Network. We welcome in, he's a Husker Hall of Famer, a great at the fullback position, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 31 years in the NFL, 22 of which with San Francisco. And the great Tom Rathman joins us. Been a busy travel day. Coach, thanks for a few minutes. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm standing here at Home Depot trying to return a mirror, so I can do 2 things at once. So let's roll, baby. Go big red.
What did you do? What did you do to the mirror, or did it just?
I didn't do anything. I had it delivered last week, and my daughter got it. And when I got there, she said it sounded a little shaky, and then I came home today and turned it up, and that doesn't sound very good. So I'm standing here in line just returning it. So,
it's funny, last time I returned a mirror.
Things at once. I can talk ball. And
we love you for doing that. And so how's the line at the Home Depot, though? Is it bad, or are you the guy on the phone right now while you're trying to return something?
No, I'm the guy on the phone.
Well, I got to ask you.
I just want to quickly say, it's funny because last time I returned a mirror, wasn't anything wrong with it, except whenever I looked in the mirror, something was wrong with it because the guy I was looking at was super ugly in the mirror, and that couldn't have been right.
It was the mirror, right?
Yeah, something was wrong with it.
Yeah, I couldn't look in it, so I didn't get to see myself. So see how ugly I was.
Well,
I am.
Hey, it might be an ugly football game to some, and it could be a throwback game for others Saturday in Lincoln, as Nebraska and Coach Rhule trying to take down number 2 Michigan. And Coach, I wanted to get your perspective. You spent some good years with Jim Harbaugh at San Francisco, and just kind of get your thoughts on the type of coach Jim is and what makes him tick. And Nebraska, Trev was talking about it last night, Trev Alberts, about that Michigan blueprint, that rebuild, that physicality they have. That's where Nebraska wants to go. What sticks out to you about Jim?
Well, the thing about him is he's got a great passion to win, and he's going to do anything to make sure that his team does win. I would say that he's a very detailed guy, and I think his operation shows that. And I know, just talking to some of the people back at Michigan, I talked to Tom Gamble. He does some of their recruiting. He used to work for the 49ers in the personnel office. He's working with Jim over in Michigan now, and he's saying, because he called me and said, hey, we got a fullback. We just signed a fullback. He's a great fullback. We're going to make him into Tom Rathman and all this. And he told me that this was one of the best teams that they've had in a long time. So it's going to be a tough test.
What have you gleaned from Nebraska? I know you keep an eye out on them, and the defenses look good from our perspective. We've seen them twice on the road, and both times in Lincoln, the offense is still trying to kind of find their footing. What have you thought of what you're seeing from Coach Rhule?
Well, I think it's a work in progress. To be honest with you, and I think that the defense has got a little head start of the offense. The whole key to winning a football game is you can't make mistakes and you can't turn the ball over. So, and I think just watching them on offense, they've been making too many mistakes and they've been turning the ball over too many times. So, when you do those type of things, I mean, you're just you're beating yourself, to be honest with you, and you can't win football games like that.
Tom Rathman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach Rathman is in line at a Home Depot returning a mirror while talking Nebraska, Michigan with us. And God love him for doing two things at once. So
I'm done with the mirror, so you got me yourself.
You just said, hey, take it back. We're good. You were a stickler as long as you coached some great running backs, and when you retired a couple of years ago, so many guys that played for you at the running back spot came forward and really shared their thoughts and love towards you. You were, I'm sure, very direct with them about taking care of the football. Tell me how you coached that when it came to ball security.
Well, to me, that's just one of the basic fundamentals of the game, is taking care of the football and knowing how to take care of the football. It all starts with the 4 points of pressure, obviously. Fingertips over the tip of the ball, and that's like a eagle claw. The ball resting against the forearm. That elbow is the critical one. Number 3, that it's locked down to the side, your rib cage. And then the ball resting against your rib cage under your pectoral. There's some techniques with the wrist above the elbow. There's body ball boundary, meaning get the ball on your outside arm, keeping the ball away from your pursuit, so you can use a stiff arm. So you got to be able to carry it in your right hand, and you got to be able to carry it in your left hand when you're going those directions. And then you got to squeeze it. Mm-hmm. I think those things I've been preaching. And the last year I was in the league, we led the league in no fumbles. Mm-hmm. So not no fumbles, but we were the lowest fumbling team in the league. my last year. We got better every year I was there at Indianapolis. So we were in the top 5 every year. So, but I mean, there's a premium on that. And, you know, if you're not doing it, you're not winning. So,
Coach, a thought on Nebraska doing more option football with their offense. Harbaug's come in and ran it well. We've not seen a pitch yet. That's all right. If you're a Nebraska fan, he's been able to get pretty good yards per carry. But do you like seeing option football back in Lincoln?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the game. And, you know, just watching their last game, they're running some plays that we ran when I was there. You know, they were running that 40 and 41 pitch with 2 backs in the backfield where you toss it and then coming downhill. They were running some sprint loads, which is the option game, where you got a fullback out in front of you. So they're, you know, trying to, I think that Matt probably, you know, got with Tom Osborne or something, or Tom said, hey, why don't you run the pitch and run the sprint load option? Those were 2 of the best plays that we had back in the day. And sure enough, I did see them in the football game the other day. So, you know, you have to compliment them for that, just trying to get back to some of that stuff.
It's Tom Rathman with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking Nebraska, as well as talking Michigan. He spent some time coaching under Harbaugh during his time with the 49ers. And Tom, tell me, in your mind, from what you've seen from Nebraska's physical nature so far this year, how close are they in that regard to being what a Nebraska football team should be in terms of physicality? I'm not sure how many chances you've gotten to watch the Huskers this year, but just what is your take on how close the physical nature of the football team is? Because they're going up against one of the most physical teams in the country in Michigan this weekend.
I mean, that's one thing you have to emphasize every day. And, you know, you pretty much get what you emphasize. And, you know, obviously, you know, you take a look at their defense, their defensive line in general. I'd take a look at those guys, and those guys are playing, you know, at a pretty high level right now. And then, you know, the back end of that defense, you know, is coming along with them. The offense, I think, is, like I said, it's a work in progress. I mean, obviously, you want to win every play. I mean, that should be what you're striving for. And really, it's not that hard. I mean, you know, you sit here and say, hey, you want to win every play when you go on a football game. Well, all you have to do is you have to win the next play. And if you do everything that you're coached to do, from your aiming point, course, footwork, fit. I mean, I had something for the running backs every play on every scheme. It was mapped out, so there's no way that they could fail. I mean, that's how I coached, and, you know, it was a lot easier for me because I played the game and kind of figured out, you know, what I needed to do, you know, as far as my footwork to put myself in a position if I had to make an adjustment. You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that you have to get to, the detailed of a system, of a play, and all you have to worry about is winning the next play. And if you do it the way it's supposed to be done and the way you're coached, and it's coached the way that you want it, I mean, you can't get it. I mean, you're going to get it, is what I'm saying. At least that's, you know, I had success through my career as a coach, you know, getting the players to play at those high levels with consistency. I mean, that's how I did it.
Hall of Famer Tom Rathman, couple more minutes with us at Hail Varsity Radio, Nebraska, Michigan, and, of course, Coach Rathman with Coach Harbaugh for a number of years in San Francisco. Coach Rathman, what do you think about the crowd Saturday, the impact the crowd could have? Is that a real thing?
Well, that's the one thing that they can make it hard on Michigan, you know, if they're loud. And I would advise all the people in Nebraska, go and, you know, scream your lungs out until you can't scream anymore, because that's one of the advantages of being at home is that crowd noise. And Nebraska Cornhusker fans, they're, you know, fabulous. I mean, going back, you know, all the way back to the 70s, they stayed consistent with what they're doing as far as cheering on the Huskers. And, you know, we just got to get it cranked up this week. The folks that are going, I think, will
no doubt try and do that. There's a little bit of lack of buzz this week, Coach Rathman, just because of what Michigan is and where Nebraska's at right now.
Well, upset them, and then you'll bring some buzz. That's all you have to do. And if the players are listening to me, all you have to do is take it one play at a time and just win the next play and play your ass off and hit them before they hit you. Those are things that give you advantages, out on the field. So hopefully they can do that.
Tom, we had a caller last hour that wanted to talk about Michigan's strength of schedule so far this year, saying Nebraska's been tested against teams like Minnesota and against Colorado, whereas Michigan's played UNLV and Bowling Green. And you think there's anything to that? Michigan returned a lot of talent from last year. It was a team last year that played in the college football playoff, but he is right. They haven't really been tested this season. Is there anything to that in your mind?
I don't think there's anything to that, so don't even buy into it. Don't even say it, because it's not true. So
Michigan's pretty good.
These guys think this is one of their most talented teams that they've had, and I know Jim Harbaugh, the way he coaches, and they're going to be detailed, and they're going to come out and they're going to strike the Huskers, and they're going to hit them, and they're going to get up and go back to the huddle, and they're going to come back and they're going to hit them again. And, whoever can take the punches and deliver the punches and can, hit them harder than the other guy, and they can take care of the football, play good fundamental football. That's a team that's going to win. Nebraska can win. Anybody can win. You look at every week there's upsets. So don't think that Nebraska can't win this football game. Michigan turns the ball over. Nebraska capitalizes on that. They play sound offense, defense, special teams, put a whole game together with all three phases of the game, and they can beat them.
Coach Tom Rathman's with us, Husker Hall of Famer, 49er Hall of Famer, two-time Super Bowl champ. Coach, before we say goodbye, and we'll let you get out and get you out of Home Depot, you have any other shopping to do? Let me ask you that.
No, that was it. I was kind of disappointed in that, too. I was looking forward to seeing it, and it was a nice mirror that had lights on the outside and had steam, and so I had to bring it back. They're going to deliver it again. So
all right.
Hopefully we'll have better luck next time.
Well, Tom, I mean this in the best way possible. You do strike me as the kind of guy that could kill an hour at Home Depot just wandering up and down the aisles and giving some advice to people who look confused. That's a compliment in my mind.
Well, I'm not afraid to put myself to work, and those are my hobbies that I do now. So I painted my daughter's house about 2 weeks ago. So painted my house probably about 6 months ago. So do a little bit of that work.
I like it. Good. Tom Rathman, painter galore. I like it. So last thought here with Coach Harbaugh. What was your first interaction with Coach Jim? Was it at that Fiesta Bowl? Was it just in the NFL? What do you remember about meeting him the first time?
Well, I didn't really know him when we played him, but the first time I saw him was I was sitting in my office at San Francisco, and we have glass walls, and it's in a square, and we have a big table in the middle where we meet as a staff. Well, he came in, and he was sitting down at that table facing my room, and I had my screen right on the desk, and I was looking at my screen. So he all of a sudden says, "Hey, Tom." And I look at him, and he says, "Wake up." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm watching film." Oh, that was my first interaction with him. So,
watching film. Coach, we'll do this again. Always love spending some time with you, and thanks for making time today, Coach Rathman.
You got it, man. Love it. Back in California safe, so here we go, another week.
All right, we'll see how
Good
the
luck to
Huskers.
the Huskers.
All right. Tom Rathman. Coach, you take care.
Okay. See you guys later.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in New York Times bestselling author, host of his own radio show, and down there in Titletown at Alabama, Lars Anderson back with us at Lars Anderson 71. On Twitter's where you follow him. Lars, it is Nebraska-Michigan week. I've got a seat for you, my friend. Are you making your way northward?
I wish. I'm not going to be able to make it. Got some kid duty this weekend. But, hey, I like what Matt Rhule's doing. And this is just from afar, right? It takes time to install a culture. And, I had a front row seat in 2007 when Nick Saban arrived in Tuscaloosa. And the Alabama lost to Louisiana Monroe that first year. They went 6-6. And I've written 2 books about Nick Saban and about specifically that year. And it's like he had to shake the bad apple tree to make the bad apples fall and leave the program. And the guys who didn't buy in. And essentially with Mike Shula's players, then in 2008, they run the table in the regular season, get to the SEC championship game, lose to Florida. All right. In 2009, get back to the SEC championship game, beat Florida, and then go on and beat Texas and win the national championship in year 3. Now, can Matt Rhule do that same thing? Probably not. That's very accelerated. And frankly, college football back then, and we're only talking, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, vastly different sport than it is right now. And I think all the changes that have gone on in the sport, I think Nick Saban is just tired of it. And I think that is going to sort of initiate or precipitate him leaving the coaching ranks probably sooner than he would like, just because he's tired of dealing with the NIL, the transfer portal, just all this other extraneous stuff that you didn't have to contend with just 5 years ago. But I think with Matt Rhule, the kids are playing hard. Like, I can see that, and the effort level is really good. There's passion, and I think Matt Rhule he knows what he's doing. He knows how to build programs, and to me, there's just a different feeling, different vibe than there was under Scott Frost, and that's very welcome.
Lars, to jump in, when we talk about look and feel and what your eyes tell you, I mean, he pretty much has followed through on what he says was going to happen this first year. The team's going to play physical, and they've been doing that in practice, and it's carried over to Saturdays. You've seen that on the defensive end through 4 games. They're kind of finding what they're maybe good at or okay at on offense, and that's some downhill run. They're still limited at quarterback, just from a passing standpoint. That's being nice, but they're a work in progress on offense, and you're seeing development. You're seeing guys that, all right, jumped on somebody's radar at some point in the recruiting world, and had maybe gathered dust or just didn't get a look, but they've gotten looks. They've gotten better. And the Nebraska fan base isn't super jacked as we talk Tuesday right now about Nebraska-Michigan. You grew up going to Nebraska games. Whenever number 2 would come to town, it was a great Saturday because Nebraska had a fighting chance, and usually Nebraska had a small number next to their name as well. Right now, I mean, Harbaugh is the class of the Big Ten, although Penn State's really good this year, and Ohio State showed a lot in South Bend Saturday. But Harbaugh, his blueprint is something Rhule talked about yesterday, where you're just a killer on both lines of scrimmage. You practice physically, and you pay attention to detail. So I think that gives hope. You just have to have some patience in year 1. And with Nebraska, You're seeing it already on the defensive side. They killed it with their hires. The development's been good. The offensive side of the ball has been a little slower to come along.
Well, yeah. Need a difference maker at the most important position, right? Quarterback. And Sims gave the game away against Minnesota. He gave the game away against Colorado. You just can't have that out of your quarterback. And I don't even know why Matt Rhule is entertaining playing this kid again. Like, we know who he is. He's a guy who doesn't take care of the ball. And when your margin for error is so little, like Nebraska's is right now, can't lose the turnover game. I mean, and look what's happened these last 2 weeks, right? Just take care of the ball. Take care of the ball on offense. Win special teams. Kick ass on defense. That's who Nebraska is. And so, you know, I know Sims has supposedly elite talent, but just, you know, from outsiders' perspective here, someone who's not in the Nebraska bubble, I do not understand why that kid ever gets to step foot on the field again. If I was a head coach, you know, you drill into him, don't turn the ball over. And that was his issue at Georgia Tech, right? And nothing's changed. So what leads you to believe that anything will change moving forward? Like nothing. And so I would go with 10 moving forward. And I know he doesn't have the skill set of Sims, but again, for how you have to do self-assessment, I'm sure Matt Rhule is, of your team. And what is the path to victory, right? We don't want to keep the game close. You want to, you know, win the game. How can you upset Michigan? And that is not turning the ball over. And I don't know. I'm not sure how people feel about it in Lincoln.
They're with you. They don't want any turnovers either.
Well, no, but do people want Sims to play if he's healthy?
I think they're settled in on Harbaugh. I don't think they're completely throwing Sims away, and it's a practice to practice, day-to-day thing. Nothing's absolute, and that also means no spots are safe. So if Sims shows that he can take care of the football in practice and is healthy, he's had a high ankle issue, and you know how long that takes to heal.
Those are tough to get over.
Right, and you don't want to run him out there too quick. Now, he saw one snap as Harbaugh's helmet flew off against La Tech.
And then got grabbed by that ankle and kind of hobbled off the field just a little bit.
So, but, you know, Sims has been a great teammate. He's doing the right things. To your point about taking care of the football, the skill set's there. The decision-making hasn't been. And right now they're riding Harbaugh, and he was good to go at practice as of yesterday. Or today, I should say.
And I'm curious, does Nebraska practice full pads more than once a week?
They call it Bloody Tuesday for a reason. So, yeah, it's Bloody Tuesday, and what type of gore do we want to throw in as we approach October for Wednesday? But, yeah, they hit.
That makes sense to me because you see that toughness on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is an elite defense. In defense, so often it comes down to attitude and will. Right? What are you willing to do? How much pain are you willing to put up with? And how much are you willing to sacrifice your body? And these kids are doing it, you know, and it's just going to take some time. But I think we know what the formula for success is, right? It's going to be, yeah, and you made a great point. The blueprint is Michigan. Mm-hmm. We got to play like Michigan to get back to an elite level in the Big Ten and nationally, because you got to just control the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball, power running, and a capable quarterback.
Little option football.
Yeah, capable quarterback who can make down the field throws and one or two dynamic threats on the outside, you know, and a really good tight end game. And that's what Michigan is. And it'll be interesting to see how Nebraska's offensive line holds up against that defensive front of Michigan. Michigan is not – they're beatable. Michigan's beatable. Nebraska's just going to have to play very close to a flawless game. And like I said, win the turnover battle, win special teams, win field position, and, try to keep it close into the fourth quarter and get the crowd in full throat and see what happens.
Lars, it's funny whenever you talk about Nebraska and their goal kind of being a team like Michigan, like the qualities you laid out, I think are also similar to what Saban did at Bama, at least in the early years whenever he was running that pro-style offense, the fast physical defense. And you let off this interview talking about that 2007 Alabama season. I want to ask you, were there any moments or any games in that season, despite the fact that it was 6-6, where you could sit back and go, this Nick Saban guy, he's the one. He's the guy that's gonna save Alabama football. Were there any moments during that 2007 season that stand out in your memory, despite the record?
I mean, honestly, it was the spring game. It's called A-Day, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was like 98,000 people showed up, and that was like a religious revival, and and Saban has descended from the heavens to come and lead this religion, and when you have the fan support like that, and then Mal Moore, the athletic director at the time, who had completely bungled the search for a coach. It was so bad that his nickname inside the Alabama athletic facility was Malfunction Mal. And, because he went after Rich Rod. And I've talked to Rich Rod so many times, and he jokes about it. He's like, how blank and stupid am I? I'm the guy that turned down Alabama. I'm the guy that allowed Nick Saban to become Nick Saban. Rich Rod is awesome. Love that guy. But then during the season, you just saw that they played with a different level of tenacity and intensity. And again, he won that first national championship with Mike Shula's players. Right. I mean, there's a sprinkling of really good freshmen like Julio Jones. And by the way, Julio Jones, far and away the most important recruit of the Saban era. I don't know if I've talked to you about this, Chris, but Julio was committed to Oklahoma, and Sam Bradford was there, and Julio was going to catch a gazillion balls. And then Nick Saban went down to Foley, Alabama, which is outside of Mobile, southern part of Alabama, and went into his home and just said, hey, you're good. I know you're good. We really want you, but you know what? We're going to win with or without you, but I want you. And that was it. That was the extent of his sales pitch. And Julio was just struck by the fact that Nick Saban, he wasn't promising anything. He wasn't blowing Valentines at him. He just was very straightforward. And Julio was such an elite talent. Once you get Julio on board, all of a sudden other guys in the South are like, oh my God, Julio is going to Alabama. And that just started this cascade of players coming to Alabama. And I don't know if there's a similar recruit that and this was in year 2 of Saban, right? Because it's the same thing with Rhule. Nick didn't have a chance to finish out that first recruiting class, but it was that second recruiting class, the class of 2008, or the year of 2008. And I don't know if there's somebody similar, that Nebraska could land that could be sort of Nebraska's or Matt Rhule's Julio Jones. But I think it's really important because high school kids talk. They talk a lot. And it really takes just one recruit to be a program changer. And that's what Julio was. And, hopefully for Nebraska fans, myself included, that Matt Rhule can find a similar type of guy.
The Sue Gett was monumental with what he became. You look at Turner Gill back in Nebraska history, Tommy Frazier, obviously. You've got 3 guys that are more modern Julio examples that you're talking about. And, Nebraska's put a good class together. They've done really well in state, and the talent level of in-state Nebraska has really skyrocketed where programs, Notre Dame, Alabama, the who's who of college football are coming into the state of Nebraska, be it rural or the metros, and kids are impressing. You got a kid on on the field now that was the number one tight end recruit in the country, Thomas Fedoni. He's battled a couple of injuries, but he's really showing up now that he's healthy and getting a chance to play.
And then in the class of 2024, you have the number 2 tight end recruit in the country, and Carter Nelson, who's
right. He's out of.
What accounts for this, you guys? Why is the level of the caliber of athlete, the caliber of football player, so much better now in the state of Nebraska than it was, say, 5 years ago?
Well, maybe a couple of things. One, you've got huddle, so everyone can see everyone. So you're being discovered. You've got social media as well. But 2, you've got training facilities. Brandon Kenny's doing a training facility. Steve Warren Academy has been incredible. A lot of the blue chip prospects have trained with Steve for a lot of years, just to name a couple. And kids are just bigger, stronger, faster, says the old guy in the chair here. And they're multi-sport guys. They'll play basketball. They'll play football. They'll do baseball. They'll do track. There's so much track and field, and that's one thing Rhule's honed in on. His identity is not only going to be physical on the lines of scrimmage, but he wants the track stud and track athlete that's got that explosive speed. You're going to see, maybe not this year, maybe towards the end of this year. Elijah, you can jump in on this too. He really did well with some wow athletes at the wide receiver position. Nebraska's limited right now with what they have because some of the freshmen aren't quite ready to go. But in future years, I think you've got the possibility of that wide receiver / track star that's football tough to make their way on the field. So Nebraska's not quite ready yet for they're really ready for that athleticism to be on display, but the learning curve has not been met yet, and
so
that's kind of a work in progress.
Back and studied what Rhule was able to do at Temple, and then what he did at Baylor, and what the similar patterns were, and then and then how he's applying all of that to what he's doing now. Are you seeing that take shape?
He's been able to focus in. I think he's able to recruit at a higher clip, a higher level, a higher star rating at Nebraska than he ever was at Baylor and he ever was at Temple. But what he did a great job at both spots was identify. They identified and then developed, and it worked out well. And you saw by year 3, you get to the Big 12 championship at Baylor, and then even some remnants of Rhule when he went off to the NFL. Baylor wasn't done being pretty good, right? They were still decent in the following years. I know they're having a tough couple of seasons this year. At Temple, they didn't just go into a hole after he left. There were still some positive remnants of what he had recruited, and I think he was pretty good at putting guys into the NFL. So him and his evaluators have a pretty good eye for talent, but I think you're able to be in the mix for a higher level athlete. And a couple of guys that stick out to me right now for Nebraska, Cam Lenhart is an IMG kid that has kind of burst on the scene. He was a guy that Nebraska was able to keep in the class that Frost's staff had recruited, but he's playing well early. Van Poppel, remember Todd Van Poppel, the old relief pitcher?
Yeah.
His boy is playing for Nebraska, seeing some snaps. And then some of the guys that had been on campus for a while that were high-level gets they've been remade, and specifically Ty Robinson is playing at a high level, and he had been pretty good, but more so Nash Hutmacher out of South Dakota. He's really stepped his game up, and a lot of that goes to him, but also credit to Nebraska's strength and conditioning.
But back to Lars's original question real fast. The one big difference I think you see between Baylor and Temple and Nebraska is it's still that same eye for talent, that same evaluation, but at Temple and Baylor, those freshmen were getting on the field early at a higher clip. You have a couple guys for Nebraska that have made an impact early. You want to see more from the offensive side of the ball of young guys making an impact, because that was the blueprint at Temple and Baylor. You want to get those freshmen on the field early and often. Offensively, hasn't quite been there. Defensively, there's been a couple examples, but that's been the big difference is you've seen the increase to physicality, you've seen what they're doing at practice, but you haven't quite seen the next class of guys, the next, the program builders for what Matt Rhule wants them to be, see the field just yet.
Yeah, it seems to me that the talent is there, right? It exists in areas that Nebraska can access, but you gotta hit on them, right? And it's got to be, you got to develop this is what Nebraska is. You got to develop 3 stars into 4 or maybe even 5. If you get that rare 4, develop him into a 5. And it can be done. But Chris, both you guys and Elijah, you'll get a kick out of this. I talk about Nebraska all the time on my radio show, all the time. And now my radio partners and even callers, my new nickname is Volleyball Anderson.
That's what we heard leaving Boulder. We were leaving Folsom Field, and CU fan was like, "Well, you guys, at least you have a hell of a volleyball team."
Hey, I wear it proudly. And so now I make it a point to give volleyball updates to really just to agitate the listeners and my partners.
Lars, you got a prediction before we say goodbye? Line is 17.5. Could be up to 18.5. Do you think Nebraska keeps it close? Does this thing go into the fourth quarter with a question mark, or do you think it's all Michigan Saturday?
I think maybe 28-14 Michigan, somewhere in there. I think the line will be pretty close, relatively low scoring. Nebraska can, again, 1 or 2 big plays on offense. You win special teams, you win the turnover battle, then they can be there in the fourth quarter. But Nebraska just doesn't have the depth. They don't have the elite athletes that Michigan
You're missing
does.
some playmakers on offense.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Nebraska's offense is death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's 3 yards, 4 yards, 7 yards, and maybe they'll pop, 1 big one or 2. But this is not an offense that possesses a lot of firepower. And so then I understand why you'd want to go with Sims if he's healthy. Because he's more of he's an all or nothing kind of player, right? Boom or bust. Problem is the busts outweigh the boom so far, and so I would stick with the guy who's won the last 2 games.
Lars Anderson, New York Times best-selling author, host of his Alabama radio show Statewide, and can find Lars on Twitter at LarsAnderson71. Lars, we'll do this again sooner rather than later. Awesome to get caught up. Thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
Yeah, and it's when Nebraska pulls off the upset, Chris, I'm going to have you on my show on Monday.
I'll be waiting a while.
All right, take care, you guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff today. Big thanks to Tom Rathman and Lars Anderson, and of course Mitch Sherman. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast, Hail Varsity Radio. Subscribe, download, and leave a comment. Happy to take the good, bad, ugly of the comments. And yes, watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Our friend David chimes in, and David's locked in when it comes to the gambling and betting side of things. Lets us know that Warhorse took in 92% of the bets on Colorado, Nebraska. That was on Colorado. And you have the over-under right now at 39.5. 4 games is what David's reporting to us. The total has been at 40, 41, 45, and 47. In 3 of the 4 games Nebraska's played has hit the under. And right now the over-under for Nebraska and Michigan's at 39.5.
And that comes after one of the sharps, according to David, in Vegas, put $77,000 on the under.
Mm-hmm. So if you're doing the math,
I wish I just had $77,000 sitting around to take to Vegas.
If you're doing the math and you look at the spread, I mean, this thing's looking like a 28-10 number, right? And we'll see where Nebraska is offensively. That's the big question. Turnovers, production, what can Nebraska get going downhill? We'll get to a quick phone call here, time permitting, 489-1240. 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. And tomorrow on the show, Greg Henson, Michigan Insider, going to join us. Evan Bland with the World Herald. Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, checks in with this busy show Thursday as we're out of the Single Barrel in Lincoln. You're invited out 4 to 6, so come see us at the Single Barrel Thursday. Friday, we hit the road up to the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill in La Vista. Come see us there just off the interstate, kind of by Cabela's and by Embassy Suites. So we're at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill Friday, 4 to 6. And then we are locked in with our friends Seth and Greg at The Bar this Saturday as the weekend edition of Hail Varsity, noon to 2 in front of Michigan, Nebraska, at The Bar, 1644 P Street. Come see us and get vibed up. And then a Real Red Reaction follows immediately after Nebraska, Michigan from The Bar. As Bluto said in Animal House, it could be the greatest night of your life. But you want to make it the worst. Sorry, that's a bad Bluto. Who's with us real quick?
Should be interesting. We go to Kagan on the phone line.
Kagan, thanks for calling. Go for it, dude.
Hi. So obviously Nebraska is looking to shock the world this weekend against Michigan. Another team that is looking to shock the world to be Elijah's fantasy team. Elijah, you're off to an 0-3 start so far this year. Would you attribute that to playing possum or just sheer incompetence, or will you get a win this weekend?
So this is my fantasy
Who wins
football
first,
league.
Elijah's fantasy team or the Broncos?
What was that?
Said who wins first, Elijah's fantasy team or the Broncos?
You know, both have been absolutely pitiful up to this point. I would honestly give it to Sean Payton's Broncos because he's looking like a hell of a lot better manager than Elijah is.
Well, at least they play Chicago. Elijah doesn't have
true.
Chicago next week.
There is an old saying, though. You can't win your league at the draft, but you can lose it. I may have lost my league at my draft this year.
Get that tattoo needle fired up. Keegan, thanks for the phone call. Back tomorrow at 4. It's Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.